Look at that. I didn't know you had the lights on there already.
Yes, sir.
It's looking good. It's looking good, except for those wheelbarrow handlebars. That's gonna get fixed.
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we have our guest, Mike. He brought in his 2015 Road Glide. We're gonna be doing the 12-inch Folsom Prison Series bars. We're gonna change out his 8-inch stock bars, which are terrible, right? I haven't seen these yet. He hasn't seen them yet, so this is gonna be first impressions. So let's get these unboxed and installed on the bike. Yeah, they package the hell out of these things. So Tab Performance definitely likes to package their stuff nice and neat, very secure. Oh, those are nice. Those are very nice. I like them.
Gee,
what do you think?
I love them. I love them. As far as looks like they'd be fairly easy to wire in, especially if you're gonna do anything yourself.
So I heard they edge this, so it's not a sharp edge when you're doing your wiring.
Pretty much so.
So they have a soft edge, so when you're running your wires through, it should be pretty easy. But everything's always seemed pretty easy until you get to it. Yeah, that looks nice. All right, guys, so we have these unboxed, and our first impressions, at least my first impression, these things are beefy, they're stout. I definitely like the way they look. What do you think, Mike?
Honestly, it was like opening a Christmas present. I couldn't stop smiling. As far as going from stock to these Folsom Prism series, it's gonna be an amazing change. I cannot wait for this installation.
Yeah, just looking at these, obviously Harley, you know, they put these bars on here. I think they just know we're gonna upgrade anyway. So I'm really glad that we were able to get these from Tab Performance. They definitely hooked it up. I'm looking forward to getting these on and, you know, getting him a smoother and better ride, because it's always better when you're up here than down here. You know, we're not working the farm pushing wheelbarrows, right? So definitely looking forward to getting these installed. This is a very simple install. So yeah, man, I'm gonna kick you out of here and I'm gonna get these things on.
Absolutely.
Good? All right. All right, guys, so for tools, I did use a vise. This just helps me with the handlebars to keep them in place when I'm trying to run the wires through. I did use some rubber tubing just to keep the bars protected. I used electrical tape, some braided cable sleeve with a string and a nut, foot-pound torque wrench, inch-pound torque wrench, a couple size ratchets, some blue Loctite, a couple picking tools, cable tie cutters, T27, T25, 1/4-inch hex bit, a couple of adapters for the torque wrenches, a 2-inch extension, and a 4-inch extension. All right, so first things first, I'm gonna put on the tank cover so I don't scratch the paint. So now I'll remove the instrument bezel. I'll start off by removing the ignition switch cover. You have a tab on the bottom. You just push on this and it'll pop right out. So on the instrument bezel, there's a torque screw on each side, and I'm using a T25 with an extension. So I'll turn the ignition switch knob to the left. I'll lift straight up on the bezel. Now you do have a connector on the right side and the left side, and in the center. They're all held on by these retention clips. You can use a screwdriver to pop them off. So on the throttle side, I'll remove the master brake cylinder and brake lever assembly. You have 2 torque screws and they're a T27. So I'll just thread the screws back in so I can keep this together. And once I remove this assembly, I'll just put it inside of a bag and I'll hang it from the turn signal. And now for the left side, I'll remove the clutch hand lever and bracket assembly. And same thing, you have 2 torque screws and they're a T27. So now I'll remove the upper bar clamp. Now before I do that, I'm gonna wrap a bungee cord around the bars. That way when I loosen up the screws, the bars can just rest on the tank. And to remove these screws, I'm using a 1/4" hex bit with an extension. All right, now that we have the upper bar clamp removed, I'll disconnect the 3 handlebar switch connectors. So this far right connector is your right handlebar switch harness. The one in the middle is your run stop switch. And the far left is your left handlebar switch harness. So this is the TGS connector. I'll just disconnect it here. I'll separate the TGS connector, which is your twist grip sensor. And now I can remove the bar. And something I always like to do is just put the screws back in so I don't lose them. All right guys, so here I'm just using a clamp with rubber grips. This is gonna help me with the bars just to keep them in place when I'm taking everything off. Also, it's gonna help with the new bars when I'm trying to reroute the wires back in. I'll also take some bicycle tubing and wrap it around the bars. Now for the clutch side, in most cases, if not all, this grip is gonna be glued on. You can do it while it's still mounted on the bike. It is a little easier, but I'm gonna do it on the table. Now in order to remove the grip, I'll go ahead and disconnect the switch housing, and for the trigger finger switch cap, just carefully slide it away from the switch housing, not up, and it comes right off. Now to separate the switch housing from the bars, you have these 2 Torx screws. You loosen them up, they won't come completely out, just loosen them up until they stop. And to loosen these up, I'm using a T25. So once you get the switch housing off, you just want to be careful with this ribbon. You don't want to damage it. So now I'll disconnect the connector for the switch housing. And here there's just a retention clip. Just lightly pry up on this latch and it'll pop loose. And from there, you can remove your switch housing. And then from here, just work your wire free. So I'll put the switches or the control module back into the switch housing so it doesn't get damaged. So like I said, in most cases, these are glued down. This one was not. Now for the throttle side switch housing, it's the same thing. You have these 2 Torx screws and they're a T25. And now here you have 2 connectors. I'll go ahead and disconnect those. Now for the throttle grip, you just want to lightly pull back. You don't want to damage anything. So I'll start on the throttle side. I'll pull it out until I can access the connectors. I'll disconnect those and pull it out through here. And now I'll remove the clutch side, and with this wire, you can go either direction. Now before you reinstall the wires on the new bars, just remember that the white connector goes towards the switch housing. And that's it with these bars. Now it's time to throw down with the tab. So here I'm just using a string with a nut tied on the end. This is gonna help me get the string through the bars. That way I can route the tubing. So now I'll just take my string and tie it to this tubing to get it through the bars. I'm gonna put these inside of here just to keep them protected. And once you pull on this, it kind of snugs it down to help it guide it through. Now, if you're using electrical tape, don't use too much and don't put it too tight, or you might have a hard time getting it off. So I have these pulled through the tubing. I'll take this connector and wrap it down at the end. That way, when I pull this through, it should line up right about here. But if it doesn't, I can use a picking tool to fish it out. So I'll take this wiring and put it through this tubing, just to protect those connectors, and I'll tape it off to the end here. So again, just take your time routing these through and just slowly do a push-pull method. All right, so that was pretty simple getting these through. I'll fish this other wire out of here so I can finish routing it and get these wires connected. Now for your throttle, you just want to make sure that it's seated correctly. So the throttle side is usually the hardest side, so I always knock that one out first. It went in pretty easy with these bars, so I'll knock out the clutch side, and this one should be real simple. Now just make sure you're looking at your connectors before you route them through. This white connector is going to go up towards the grip. Same thing with this one, just take your time routing it through. All right guys, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Just wanted to stop and say thank you for watching. And if you've already subscribed, I really do appreciate it. Also, I want to apologize. I did lose some footage on this one as far as putting the controls back on and the grips, but it's pretty much the same process as when you took everything off. You just want to put everything back on in the exact same way. Also, with those wires, you just want to make sure it's tight on the throttle side to make sure that throttle is sitting on there correctly, nice and snug, and it's sitting between those notches. Other than that, guys, let's get back to the video. So now I'll just remove the top clamp so I can install the handlebars. Now when you're mounting your bars, you usually have a pin right here. It's for the stock Harley-Davidson bars. It goes inside the bar and it doesn't allow for any adjustability forward or back. Now if your new bars that you're mounting doesn't have a slot for that pin, you can knock that pin down. But for the TAP Performance bars, it does have a slot for that pin, so it'll allow for some adjustability forward and back. Now if you don't want to use that pin, you can always just knock it down until it's flush with this bar clamp. Now before I install my clamp, I'll go ahead and connect my wires. So I'll reconnect the twist grip sensor. You have 2 connectors on this wire. These only go in one way. Here I have the left side harness connected all the way to the left. I'll connect my run stop switch. And now I'll connect the right side harness. And I'll just take a couple zip ties to tighten these wires up. So before I reinstall the master brake cylinder and the clutch assembly, I'm gonna sit on the bike just to get a feel for the bars to see where they'll feel comfortable, and I'll tighten it down from there. So for the handlebar upper clamp screws, it's calling for 16 to 20 foot-pounds. I'll tighten them down to 18. So now I'll reinstall the master brake cylinder and brake lever assembly. So start with the top screw first and then do the bottom. So before I tighten this down all the way, I'll sit on the bike and I'll see where this feels comfortable, and then I'll tighten it down all the way. Also, before I finish tightening this down, I'll check the throttle to make sure it operates. So for the brake master cylinder clamp screws, it's calling for 60 to 80 inch-pounds. I'll tighten them down to 70. So for the right side housing screws, it's calling for 35 to 44 inch-pounds. I'll tighten it down to 40. So now I'm going to reinstall the clutch assembly. I'll push on this grip just to make sure it's seated. And it's the same thing as the other side. So before I tighten this down, I'm just going to make sure that everything is seated correctly. Everything is firmly pushed together. Also, I'll sit on the bike to get the desired angle for the clutch and switches. Now that everything's installed and tightened down, I'll zip tie the brake line and the clutch line to the bar. Now before I reinstall the instrument bezel, I'm going to turn on the bike and work the switches just to make sure everything works. So here you have your left, your right, and your center connector. Now for your center connector, there's a notch on the bottom. So when you go to reinstall this, just remember that this notch is facing towards the bottom. And for your right connector, just remember that that retaining clip is on the bottom as well. So I'll get the 2 Torx screws finger started and then I'll tighten them down. And once again, I'll just turn the bike on just to make sure that the connectors are connected. And lastly, I'll reinstall the ignition switch cover. Alright guys, so here you have it, the 12-inch Folsom Prison Series bars from TAP Performance. Now TAP Performance has come a long way when it comes to exhaust, and I really enjoy their exhaust. And now that they're moving into bars, and for this being their first set of bars, they knocked this one out of the park. Huge fan of these bars. I like the way they look. They're really beefy. It was really simple to install those cables through here, all those wires. Really simple to run through there. I do believe for the Street Glide, you do have to buy some extensions, but either way, it was really simple to run those wires. If I didn't have bars on my bike already, I would be putting these on mine. I didn't put any blue Loctite on the clamps just yet. I want him to sit on the bike. That way I can adjust the bars for him. That way he can get a feel for them, and I will adjust them for his riding height or however he feels comfortable with his. And then we'll throw some blue Loctite in there, and then I'll finish installing them for him. But I wanted to get a feel for these, because how am I supposed to tell you that I like these bars when I haven't even ridden with him yet? So I do believe with every bar purchase, they do donate that 5% to Wheels for Warriors. I can't remember what it is. Warriors on Bikes. I can't remember. I'll put a link down in the description below. I hope you enjoy the video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll see you on the next one. So how you like those bars?
These things are a beast, man.
You like them?
Completely different. Completely different.
Better feel?